to be exposed, I guess. But when you look at countries like Greece and Italy and all these European countries that are going down, um, see, the root of the cause of all of these illnesses, Johnny, is the system that was set up over the last hundreds and hundreds of years by Rome. And in particular, the power families of Rome, the black nobility, the remnants of, the old empire, they're still running the show. The Julian and the Flavian and the Constantine family, the Piso family, these are the four major families from Rome, from Europe, basically, that run the show still today. Is based on slavery, Roman slavery. And proof of that is when you get a birth certificate, you're actually getting a warehouse document for the delivery of a new child, which that birth certificate will be turned into a bond, securitized, turned into a bond, floated on the market for the banksters. So we are just chattel. See, everyone in Greece, everyone in Europe, everyone around the world that has this birth certificate thinking that they are citizens of their own country. No, they're not. They're citizens of the biggest corporation in the world, which is the Vatican, which is controlled by the elites. Now, what do they do with those bonds? And why are we bonded? Why are we slaves? Bond means slaves. Slave, doesn't it? A bondsman. If you're a bondsman, you're a slave. Well, your security is a bond. Your birth certificate is a bond. Now, what they do with that is criminal, because it's for fraud, to steal your wealth. In fact, all of our bonds have generated billions of dollars for the banksters. My bond at my age, 48, would probably be worth about $1.2 billion. That's how much the banks have benefited from me.
Mm-hmm. Santos, one second, you're getting stuck. Your image has got stuck. Maybe you can move your camera, because I can hear you clearly. We can hear you clearly, but your image got stuck.
Okay.
Perhaps you can. Why don't I take a quick break, and then we'll get back to you. So see if you can, because I want the people to see you. We'll be right back with more Santos Bonacci here at the Truth Hour. We'll be right back. Okay, so we have Santos back on the line. We want to make sure that we see you, Santos, so we don't just hear the audio, because it's important that our audience also sees your expressions and the message that you're transmitting. Okay, so Santos, so you were telling us about the birth certificate and the bond. Explain now. I want you to explain to the folks that are new to these topics. I mean, you lecture on this heavily to a lot of people who are aware of this. See, for the first time someone they hears this, the first thing they're going to say is this guy crazy? What is he talking about? I have a birth certificate. This is the way I identify myself. This is how I get a passport. This is how I know I'm a citizen of the United States, or I'm a citizen of Australia. So can you clarify this for our audience that are not too aware of what this means, and they don't think that we're just crazy, because this is not crazy. I mean, it sounds crazy because it's so evil that sounds crazy. So can you please clarify that again, please?
Yeah. When we're born in hospital, we're born in a ward. You see, now, have you heard of a prison ward? Yeah. Have you heard of ward of the state? Yeah, that means you're under the state's. You are an incompetent person under the care of the state. That's why they give us welfare. It's basically for the incompetents who don't have any money and need, to feed off the government. But what they don't tell you, I mean, this is the incompetence in their system. I'm not calling unemployed people incompetent. Of course, it's their system is so cruel and merciless. Excuse me. When they issue you a birth certificate and your parents sign your name away, now parents don't question what's going on. What have I just done? I've just told the government that I have a new child and I've registered that child with the government because I believe my child will grow up and inherit many, many of the benefits. You see, parents must be thinking there must be a benefit, otherwise they would never would put their child into slavery, would they? But you see, what happens when you register a birth certificate is you're entering into a contract with the state. And you're supposed to have benefits. But when you look at the benefits that you do get, like welfare and things like that, and the money that they take by floating your birth certificate as a security on the stock market, the comparison, there's no comparison. The benefits go all their way by billions of dollars. The little scraps that we get in terms of benefits, they're not benefits at all. That's a big handicap. It's a system devised by Rome to defraud humanity, keep them in control, and keep them enslaved. This is why I'm teaching to lose the name, because by returning the birth certificate to the Crown, and you tell them of their fraud, this is my proof that I returned my birth certificate and I am out of the system. By doing such a thing, you collapse the bond too, and the banksters lose about $1 billion. Therefore, the system will collapse sooner because it was designed to collapse anyway.
$1 billion? You mean I'm worth $1 billion in the stock market?
Yeah. Or check out. You can work this out by calculating the GDP of your country and how many people, the population of your country. Ecuador is probably not as rich as Australia, I would say. So you're probably 900 million, 800 million, or something like that.
Okay, Santos, that sounds funny, but it's the truth. I mean, to think that
it sounds ridiculous, but we've all been enslaved. The whole world is a slave farm. It's a slave farm, and everybody that's working has actually got a job, an occupation, because the whole world is occupied. Mm-hmm. We all have an occupation.
That's correct.
We're slaves on the farm, like Bob Dylan sang, Maggie's farm.
Yeah, I mean, this is a classic example of this. Is the income tax in the United States. I don't know how it's in Australia, but in the United States, there was a documentary done by Aaron Russo, who all of a sudden, a few months after that he did this documentary, American Freedom to Fascism, he suddenly developed stomach cancer and he died. But basically, he was bringing up the argument that there is no there is no federal income tax on the wages of an average worker. See, there is no law in the Constitution of the United States that says that an individual has to pay an income tax out of his labor. Corporations is another thing. There is a law for that. So, I try to explain this to people, and being that my background was accounting, and specifically in taxes, I would see this fraud every day. And people, for example, a person who made maybe $20,000 a year, which is pretty low in the United States. It's a factory worker that makes $200 a week. Maybe down here in South America, it's a lot of money, but in the States, it's not. It's pretty poor. when they would come and do their income taxes, they had two kids. They didn't own a home. They made $20,000. They took out of their paycheck about $2,500 in just federal income tax, not state, not FICA, not Social Security. That totaled to about 30, almost 40% of their wages. Okay, just talking about federal income, it was about $2,000 on that amount. Now, they would get a refund of about $4,000, and they thought, wow, the system is great. I'm getting $4,000 back, and but they couldn't see the picture that, number one, you're making $20,000, which is nothing. You have two kids. You have to pay all this rent, all this money, yet they would get confused. The system would confuse them to think that. But then you would have someone else who is single and is making $60,000, and they took about $19,000 of federal income tax, and those people were hoping that they would get at least $1,500 back, And then it's like, as long as you can get me back $1,500, I'll be happy. But I would say they just took $19,000 out of your paycheck. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's not including, as I said, the state tax, the FICA, the Social Security, and God knows other taxes. But it's a system that's so crazy, yet it confuses the people. So this is why I'm asking you, Santos, to clarify as much as you can with the birth certificate and this fraud that they've done on the world, actually, Mainly I speak from the U.S. I'm not too familiar yet with the stuff here in Ecuador, but I'm sure that it's the same system here. I mean, we have our IDs and everything are with capital letters and, the same shenanigans. So, I mean, when you I want you to clarify that a little bit more for folks, because I think they're finally getting it, but yet it still sounds too crazy to believe this.
Yeah. Look, I would suggest to the listeners to have a look at my 1-hour video on law, Reclaiming Dominion, a History. That's what it's called. Law, Reclaiming Dominion, a History. It's just 1 hour on my YouTube site, and that's called Mr. Astrotheology. Now, on there you will learn how the Catholic Church did this over the past couple of thousand years. The Roman system has been around solidly for 2,000 years, annexing countries and land grabbing land all over the planet. I mean, see, people don't realize when the Americas were conquered, were taken, the entities that went over, you see, it wasn't just individuals going over like Captain Cook and Christopher Columbus and a bunch of men. No. It was societies like the Dominicans, and it was corporate entities. The Vatican was sending over its people to establish its colonies and companies and states. That's why North America is run by the Vatican. The US is a Vatican corporation. It's a corporation. It's one of the biggest Vatican corporations there is. When you look at Congress, you see the big American flag, in Congress, and then you'll see the big fasci of Rome standing, the two big Roman fasci standing next to that big flag that stands behind the speaker in Congress, So when Barack Obama is standing in front of that military admiralty law flag, they're telling you this is Rome's corporation, because they always display their symbols and insignia and logos. They always do. Yeah, they always have their prominent logos, and all of the logos of America, of United States, are Vatican logos.
Santos,
now,
but is it Vatican or is it English? Because there's a lot of information that says that the American corporation is run by the English, but you're saying that it is the Vatican who runs the show. Who is it?
Stuff. The Crown, the Commonwealth, the Holy See. The whole three of them, they're the Triple Crowns. They belong to Rome. The whole lot belongs to Rome. Regardless of the power that the Crown has and the Bar Society and, the Commonwealth and the Trilateralists and the Bilderbergers, in the end, the people who control the biggest corporation are the power elite of Rome. Now, that's not, just Roman families. A lot of these came from other parts of Europe. There's a lot of writers who have exposed the fact that it's one big sort of a European family. You'll find that the Rothschilds are related to the Habsburgs, related to the Guelphs and the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, and all of these big, the big names in Europe, the Stuarts and the Tudors and the Plantagenets and all of these big, big families. Don't for one moment think that Berlusconi and Cameron Brown and George Bush and all of these people, don't for one moment think that they came up from common people out there and became presidents and kings, etc. No. These are all cousins. It's provable. They're all cousins. Everyone who's ever ruled, even in Australia, we still have descendants of Captain Cook and Captain Bligh running the country. The Premier of Queensland is Anna Bligh. Well, the first person to put an Admiralty flag on this country 40 years ago was a Bligh. They're still running the country. They're still looting it. They're looting countries left, right and centre. All they do is go around looting the treasuries of all the countries in the world with their artificial IMF Bank and World Bank. It's all Vatican controlled. The sooner we crash, which it will, the better. Now, I've done my part. I've crashed the system by $1 billion. I have deprived their monstrous unconscious machinery of $1 billion. One day, in the future, in 10 years' time, I will be able to say, I got out of the system completely. And I'll be proud of that. But there will be a lot of people who will probably regret the fact that they supported the military-industrial complex because they wanted one of these things.
Mm-hmm. Santos, but what happens now? First of all, you got to give us information how to go about getting that information that you talk about, how to collapse the bond and retake your dominion, because there's a lot of pages that are freemen or sovereign groups who personally I think they're going about it the wrong way. This is my opinion, though. They don't want to. It's sort of like they don't want to make it easier for you. It's like, no, you go do the research, which up to a point I understand. Because that way you understand the whole system, right? But damn, if you have a form done already, can you maybe make it easier for me so I can see it, look at it, and see how it works then? Because I don't know, but this is what I've been finding out, that sort of like they don't want to give you all the answers. I mean, we're at a point where everything has accelerated, right? Obviously, the kids who are born today, they're born with they know how to work a Mac machine and Microsoft and so forth, as opposed to when you and I were children. I didn't even know how to turn on a computer. So I mean, the whole sense of evolution, it's speeding up. So I mean, how can we get that information? And once we have that information, how to collapse the bond, right? What do you do next? Because that's like a friend of mine who's a therapist. She works with children, and the first thing that she tells them, with children that they're showing signs of autism, said you got to cut all the dairy products. You got to cut the milk because it's contaminated. And the response is, well, what do I give my child if he can't drink milk? So the question is, once you do this, what do you do now that you don't belong to the system and you don't have a birth certificate? Or how do you go about this without getting into a panic and say, well, okay, well, what do I do then? My son is a nobody. He doesn't belong to anything. It's just like the people who the atheists, that tell people, well, I don't believe in God. And the people just can't understand that. They're just like, well, how can you not believe in something? But wait a minute, why do I have to believe in something? So what do you do after you collapse the bond? How do we tell people what to do?
Your first question, do I have the document Yes, I do. And anyone can contact me for this document and read the document and read how to get free from the system. It's the best system absolutely ever devised that I know of. And I've seen many, I've studied with a lot of different ones, like Franco Collins and Dean Clifford and all these great people. But I prefer this system, which was devised by Kate of Gaia, which you've already met, I think. Anyway, how do I cope? Well, it's quite easy. I mean, I'm getting by. You know, I've got my music job. I don't need to have, I can go out and do my street performing and make some money to buy my bread. I've got a simple life. I'm not market. I don't believe in their food. I don't eat the food of the world. I eat my own food, you know. I'll eat alkaline food, mostly raw, and I'm off the grid. I'm totally and utterly off the grid. I do not go to the games of this world. I don't go to their entertainment. I don't need to. I have all the entertainment and all the beauty that I need in my own life, you know. So it's total and utter freedom for all the perceived blessings that you get from this world, like, you know, I don't know. You can have access to this and you can have access to that, and you're going to get all your, you know, all your they're not benefits. They're not benefits at all. They're stealing from us 10 to 1. You know, the benefits that we get are probably about not even 1,000th of what they get from us, you know. So the sooner we wake up and get rid of this banking parasite club infested the earth by piggybacking on our honesty and our gullibility and sincerity, the sooner we get rid of this parasite, the sooner we will all have bliss and we'll all be rich. That day's not far. It's not far, my friend. It's only around the corner, months away, because this parasitic class has been so greedy that it's about to eat itself. It's going to consume itself now, and that's what's happening. This implosion, this amazing implosion, is because people are waking up and they're taking their money and support out of this system. Countries are waking up. I mean, countries like Brazil and India, China and Russia, they're all using gold to buy oil. Iran has just gone off the American dollar and gone to gold. They're all boycotting the American dollar, and they're all going to deliberately crash it because it's pure evil. The system is just a Ponzi scheme, and it's a Ponzi scheme that goes back all the way to guess who? The historical Jesus lie.
Okay.
That is the most poisonous lie in history, and I've debunked that. I've proven that there was not a historical God, man, Redeemer, Savior that came to this earth 2,000 years ago called Jesus Christ. That's the biggest buffoon story ever invented, and there's no more truth in that than there is in Humpty Dumpty or Santa Claus. You know, I've proven that beyond a doubt. There's no argument. That's behind us.
But Santos, there's a lot of people within the sovereign movement, within the people who are awake, who continue to believe that there is a historical Jesus and there was a human being who did all these miracles, and they still refer back to this historical person. So I don't understand that concept. I mean, I don't understand that. Even the false gurus, you know, they all kind of like tend to hang on to that Jesus figure, almost has to say just in case, you know, because that's been so ingrained in our subconscious mind that, you know, you can't totally take them away from the religious mind. So keep the Jesus figure. You know, I'll give you an example. There's a guy in Yelm, Washington, in the state of Washington. He calls himself Ramta, the Enlightened One, and I can vouch for this because I've been there. I've seen this. Okay, I've been there, and you know, he speaks about, or she speaks about, I don't even know what it is, but it's I don't know if you heard about him, Ramta. It's a woman who canalizes, who takes the entity of this ancient warrior called Ramta, who no one knows anything about, but Uh, and and according to the great ascended master Ramta, he talks about Jesus. You know, he calls him Jeshua ben Joseph, and says that this was a master who conquered all the seven plains. I mean, he gives you the whole story, and it sounds beautiful. I mean, you can't imagine how nice it sounds. And to people who are in dire straits to absorb more knowledge, you know, he sells, or she sells, I don't even know what it is, a good story. But yet they speak about Jesus as if he was a master, except that they sort of like give it a different tone, that he wasn't, you know, how the Christians portray him. So, I mean, why do we continue to do this? Yeah, I know you don't do it, but I know within the group that, you know, I can tell you within the group that I know, they still refer to the historical Jesus as a real human being or a God man who walked the earth to create all these miracles, and he came to save the world.
Yeah, look, first of all, most of the channeler types out there are shonksters. I'm not saying that Ramtha is. I haven't seen enough. It's a woman, isn't it? I believe she looks pretty, pretty good to me, pretty legit. I don't see any. I see a lot of shonksters out there, some of these channelers. Clairvoyance is far superior to mediumship. These people who are mediums, who need other entities to get information from, that's because they don't have the information or the clairvoyance or the knowledge, you see. So they have to rely on being a medium and channeling. Well, some of the people that they channel are the lowest, most evil spirit entities you can possibly imagine. But yeah, but let's get back to, I'm not discounting what Ramtha says, because many people do this, you know, people like Billy Myers, you know, they've gone back and they've bumped into a Jesus. There's many of these so-called, you know, enlightened people who are talking about Jesus as though it were a real person. Look, and everything in it is philosophically true. It's not historically true. This is where people get confused. You know, Santa Claus does not have a real address, but Santa Claus is real because it's philosophically real. The story of Jesus is the story of Dionysus, Osiris. It's the same story. You know, I mean, if there was a historical person that was Jesus ben Pandira or Yeshua ben Hamashiach, 2,000 years ago, Celsus called him the son of a Roman soldier called Pandira. So 2,000 years, a great philosopher, Celsus, already discovered the falsity of this story of the Jesus fictional story. He was there right on the scene, 150 years after the so-called birth of Jesus, and he said, if anything, he was a shonkster who was a raped the son of a raped woman by a Roman soldier called powerful Roman family, who had this this son called Jesus ben Pandira, went down to Egypt, learned all the magical arts, came back, was an ascended master. They killed him and stoned him. There's a bunch of these Yeshuas. You know, there's about 4 or 5. There's so many scholars like, for instance, the scholar J.R.S. Mead. He wrote a book called Did Jesus Live 100 Years Before His Time? Because there was another Jesus 100 years before that was really the true, if anything, the true model that the Romans used to insert into the Gospels to make the Gospels appear historical. They never were. You know, they simply, when you read the Gospels, it's a mythology. It's absolutely not a biography of a Jesus / God / man Redeemer Savior. Therefore, it is a mythology. It is in no way historical. It's the genre that they use to write those Gospels that is, you know, the closest to the historical genre, but it's just a genre. It's beautiful poetry, the Bible. It's absolutely gorgeous poetry based on the sun as it goes through the 12 signs of the zodiac. You know, Jesus and the 12 disciples, Jacob and the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 judges of Israel, the 12 trees in the garden of, you know, the paradise, the 12 pillars in the temple of my God. There are so many 12s. The Bible's full of 12 because the Bible is a book about El, the sun, and the 12 signs of the zodiac. So, for instance, I'm Aryan. I'm one of the 12 tribes of Israel, etc.
Yeah, I mean,
You know,
you know what it is, Santos, is that I can hire a good psychic, I could hire a good tarot reader, I could hire a good astrologist, and privately I can have them, tell me certain events that are going to happen, and I can present myself now as a guru and say, this is going to happen, that is going to happen, this in a couple of days will happen, and because there is a lot of truth to that. I mean, again, I have experienced a lot of these things, so I can speak, not on philosophy, but on real event, and no one would know this, and yet I gather a group and I begin to preach to them. I speak well, I present myself very eloquent, and I begin to tell them these things, and all of a sudden I sucker people in. This is what these gurus do. I mean, I've experienced this. Not to pick on Ramtha right now, but this is a topic that I'm talking about because I've experienced this. But all of a sudden now you have an auction to speak to the great master, and the auction begins at $20,000. And then you begin to bid to have a one-on-one interview with the great master. And that's just not right. Then there's another one, and I'll have a dinner with the great master. Okay, listen to this. It costs $5,000. We'll provide the ambient. We'll provide the master. You will provide the food, but you got to bring your own bottle of wine. And it costs you $5,000. I mean, everything is. I mean, if you look at the site, if you go into the site and you start, it's almost as if there's a desperation to make money. You can bring, because it's a big farm. It's a big farm, beautiful place, and you can bring your RVs, you can bring your motorhomes, and they'll charge you $100 a day just to park your car in the ranch. And then if you want to have Wi-Fi, then they'll charge you $50 a day. I mean, it's crazy, Santos. And like that, there's a bunch of people down here in South America as well. So how do people who are in this path right now of waking up, how do they not get suckered into these things? That's another question that I'm still trying to figure it out. Because in our own desperation to get out of this system, I think we're very vulnerable to get suckered into one of these things. So how do we do this? What do we do?
well, to know thyself. When you know yourself and you know that you are a priest unto yourself, you won't have to go and spend $5,000 to any guru, because there's no guru outside of you that is better than you for your own salvation. Your own Jesus is within. Your baby Jesus is in your breast. It's the heart chakra. And when you activate that heart chakra, then the throat chakra, then the pituitary and the pineal gland, and you're in the heaven, because as that energy goes up into the head, you become enlightened yourself with cosmic and consciousness. You don't need any guru. This is these guys are shonksters, man. They're just taking people for a ride, deceivers and misleaders, because they don't know themselves. Anyone who says, you come to me because I'll show you the way and I'll show you the path and be my followers, he is a wolf in sheep's covering, because an enlightened master, a true ascended master, a clairvoyant, has no followers. He teaches people to follow their own heart, and he teaches them how to find that they discover the divinity within. There's nothing without. And see, these people who are uninitiated and still undeveloped spiritually and still don't understand who they are, they go off to their local guru because they don't have the goods. We should all have the goods. I have my own goods. I'm self-sufficient. I will save myself. I don't depend on you. I don't depend, because you can't depend on Jesus, because it's an obnoxious, abhorrent thing to actually believe that someone else is eventually going to come along and save your ass. Yeah, it's up to you. That's clear. I mean, it's clear to, reasonable people, but people who are unreasonable and animalistic, well, Let them go off to church. Let them be deceived. But let me go back to this Jesus history thing, because there's many points that I can make here.
Yeah.
Understand what the truth is about the Jesus story. 2,000 years ago, the Christian era began. The era of Jesus. Well, let's discover who that might be, shall we? You see, if you know as above, you will understand as below. For the last 2,000 years, the sun has been in, and Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter is Zeus, the god of the gods. He's the boss. And Zeus's other name is Jesus. But his other name, you see, this is how tricky it gets in mythology, people. It's so important to understand your characters and know who the archetypes are. The other name of Jupiter is Peter, Saint Peter. In fact, when you go to Rome to kiss the toe of Saint Peter, you're kissing Zeus's toe. That's Jupiter, man. They did not change, they didn't get another statue and carve another statue for Saint Peter 2,000 years ago. They just grabbed a famous statue of Zeus. They just put it in the Vatican and they said, there you go, that's Saint Peter. And all these Catholics go to and they kiss Saint Peter's foot. They've actually worn the toe off. The toe is half worn. It's been kissed by so many millions of Catholics.
No.
They are kissing the toe of Saint Peter. That is Saint Jupiter, Zeus, who is otherwise known as Jesus. Jesus is Zeus, man. Zeus has been ruling for 2,000 years. That's the Christian period. Before that period was Aries, the ram, for 2,000 years. That's the Moses period. That's where you see Aries is ruled by Mars, and Mars is the god of war. So that's where, you know, the Old Testament was happening. The Old Testament based on the Aryan Jewish system, where God was a warlike character. In fact, you look at the book of Ezekiel in the Bible, and about 65 times there it says, I am Jehovah, I am the God of war. Because the Old Testament God is angry, because it's Mars, because Aries was ruling back then. But the New Testament God that came along 2,000 years ago, right on cue with Pisces, well, that's Jesus. He's now teaching, love your enemies, don't kill your enemies, because Zeus is different to Mars. You see, and when Aquarius comes, that'll be Saturn, and Saturn is Satan, the angel of light, because the light that Saturn gives is different to the light of the sun. In fact, its light is darkness, but it's still light, because light and darkness are the same thing, just different degrees of the same thing. So when Aquarius comes, we will be blessed with knowledge. In fact, the motto of Aquarius is I know, whereas the motto of Pisces, the two fish, is I believe and I doubt. Fish was the first 1,000 years of Pisces, where Christians were taught to, you know, to have doubt, healthy doubt. And then for the last 1,000 years, we've had believers. Doubters and believers. Pisces produces doubters and believers. That's the two fish. That's the motto of Pisces. I doubt, I believe. Aquarius that is coming, that's different. That's I know. We will know everything, because we will be blessed by Aquarius as he pours down his waters upon us. They are spiritual waters. Spirit is mind. I know is in the mind.
So when does Aquarius come in? When are we going to see this?
Already, it started in 1962 when Aquarius officially began, and at the end of this year, the 21st of December 2012, Pisces officially will end, and there will cusp. Pisces will go forever. Zeus and Jesus and all of that religion going to go bye-byes forever. It will not be known as the Christian period anymore. It'll be the Saturnian period. You see, this is why the Star of David is so important today. The Zionists use the Star of David because that's the star of Saturn, because Saturn is returning. They're just heralding, they're just telling you that we're getting ready for Saturn. The whole world's getting ready for Saturn's return.
So Santos, so this happens, and goodbye to the church, goodbye to these evil people. But is that why we're seeing so much, sort of like in a hurry to enslave more people? I mean, I'm sure they know this, what you're saying, and I'm sure they know that their era is about to end. But how is it going to end? I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, how can you describe what is going to happen without just saying, well, we're going to know more stuff, our consciousness is going to expand? But that's too vague. How are we going to see that these evil bastards are going to disappear, or their system is going to collapse?
Well, it's quite easy. What we're witnessing is the destruction of external authority, institutions, anything that has external authority or claims to have external authority over you, like policemen and judges and magistrates and marshals and constables and politicians. Like Barack Obama has got the power to do executive orders. What? No, thank you. There is no external authority outside of you. It is being destroyed right now before your eyes. And that's Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto entered Capricorn 2 years ago. That's when the destruction began. And while Pluto comes around every 250 years, it was 250 years ago that Pluto was last in Capricorn. And guess what happened then? I believe George Washington was fighting against George III, and there was a revolution, the French Revolution, the American Revolution. It was a time of revolution. Pluto in Capricorn destroys external structures. These external structures, they are fictional, and they will be pulled down by consciousness. Consciousness is what will save us.
Santos, and what is your take on this, on what's going to go on with Iran, being that the astrological movements of the stars? What can you determine? Is there going to be war against Iran? Are they going to invade and eventually a World War III? I've been talking to a lot of people, and they're very afraid that this is going to happen, and it's just going to create more havoc in the world. What's your take on that?
If it does happen, it will be very, very limited. There's no more room to continue behaving like we did 100 years ago, or in the last century, for instance. Going into North Korea, going into Vietnam, going into Chile and Argentina, and creating renegade governments wherever they go. Storming into Libya, storming into Afghanistan and Iraq, and they want to do it to Iran now. Not so easy anymore. It's going to be very, very difficult for these bastards to pull it off. If they do, well, I wouldn't be surprised, but it will be very, very limited. The time left now is reduced. Everything that must happen before the end of this system, which is imminent, must happen very, very quickly. They call them these days. They call them operations. Hillary Clinton says, "Oh, we're having we're going into Libya with our partners for a military operation." They don't call them aggressive wars anymore. They don't call their partners allies anymore. It's all corporate language. We're just going to grab some partners and we're going to go down to Libya and have a military operation. I mean, my God, how ambiguous are these expressions? They're getting away with. They appear to be getting away with murder. They will not. They will not. Soon they'll be rounded up, and you'll start to see electric chairs, gallows, guillotines coming back, prison sentences. FEMA concentration camps will be full of the elites. The Rothschilds will live there. The Pope concentration camps, all the cardinals, the scum of the earth, pedophile bastards, all of them, all of these animals, all of them. We're going to be going to the FEMA concentration camps to check and see who made it into those beautiful facilities. We're going to just celebrate the entities that are housed there for the next couple of decades, I think.
Well, I hope for sure that happens. If that does happen and you predict this, I will build a statue in your name, because this is what they deserve. These horrible human beings, or if you want to call them human beings. But I was down in Vilcabamba, which is a small, beautiful town in southern Ecuador, where I mentioned this to you last time, where people live over 100 years of age. There's something in the water, something in the air, and obviously that has attracted a lot of Europeans and North Americans, and they've bought a lot of land there, and they're building communities. And I attended this seminar where there was a lot of speakers, and according to what they were predicting, that within the next 2 months, there's going to be a huge financial disaster worldwide, that it's going to affect everyone. And the way that they were sounding, it didn't sound too pretty. It was basically try to get your stuff, get as much food as you can, buy gold, and just get ready for the disaster that's coming. What do you have to say about that, Santos?
Yeah, look, there's nothing wrong with preparation. I'm prepared. I've got plan B ready and everything like that. I have relatives up in the mountains where I can go, to be elevated if the water levels start rising. The only thing I'd be concerned with is natural things. I would not be concerned with people going around killing each other and everything like that. If it comes to that, let's say we have power outs and everything like that. People are good. They're not bad. It's the media that makes us think that there's going to be killing and there's going to be blood on the streets, etc. No, there's not. People love each other and will feed each other and will take care of each other. We're not going to just start, being cannibals all of a sudden and hating each other. The only things that I'd be concerned about is natural things, like volcanoes, earthquakes, because the earth is going to be shaken. Immanuel Velikovsky, 40, 50 years ago, predicted that the earth would start vibrating at this time, shortly after the turn of the century. It would increase its vibration. In fact, the Schumann resonancy, the vibration of the Earth, has been increasing since 1985, and it's increasing exponentially. It's increasing its vibration. So the Earth is vibrating a lot faster than it was. We're going to feel that hum soon. We're going to feel a little bit of a vibration. A sort of like a. Because everything in the universe is sustained by cymatics, by sound. The Word of God, and the Word was made flesh. So this sound, the pitch of the frequency of the earth is going to rise, you see. I'd just be concerned about getting on high land just in case, all of a sudden, which has happened before with the extinction of the mammoths, etc., the Earth's temperature suddenly drops and, stuff like that happens. That's the only thing I would be prepared for, Johnny. Please do not have any fear when you prepare for what's coming. Fear is for fools. Be in love, because whatever happens, you will be looked after. Your soul is immortal. The body's just this is just motion. What you're looking at, this physical sine wave, the body is just moving, and it will move, and all these elements one day will return to the dust, to the earth where they came from. The spirit's going back to where it came from. It's immortal. We are so privileged to have a mortal and immortal nature.
Santos,
we're so privileged.
Now you just reminded me of something that someone sent me an email from our last show that you said, I just remembered that, the chemtrails that are spraying all over us, you said that that's not going to affect those who are awakened, because that's not in our vibrational state, or can you clarify that? Because that person that wrote said, yeah, well, I liked, he goes, yeah, that sounds very nice and beautiful in theory. He says, but let me throw some cyanide poison on top of you, and since you're awakened, to see if it doesn't affect you. So, you remember that you had said that about the chemtrails, it won't affect those people who have sort of woken up?
Yeah. Well, let me qualify that. I mean, okay. If you're, say, protected against bullets, you have a protective, they have those protective shirts. A lot of policemen wear them, and a bullet cannot penetrate. If one is prepared, one needs not worry about chemtrails and fluoride, etc. If one is not prepared and is unconscious, then they are going to be poisoned by these things. Now, I'm breathing the same air as everybody else, but what I put into my body, see, I put sodium chloride into my body, I put raw food into my body, I walk on dirt every day. 45 minutes I go up the hill and I walk on the dirt, so that my feet, the earth, I take my shoes off. Those shoes are very unhealthy. They're very toxic because they stop the free radicals and the toxins from being discharged out of the body. To get rid of free radicals and toxins, the best way is to earth yourself. Take your shoes off and walk on the earth, not the grass, the earth.
Yeah, that's funny that you said that, because I was speaking to another friend of mine a couple of days ago, and she was telling me, because, John, do you remember back in the old days they would make shoes that the soles were made out, they weren't made out of rubber, because that exactly what you're saying, it didn't let you connect to the earth. They were made out of wood, or a material that it was natural, as opposed to today where most of our shoes are just synthetic rubber. It prevents you from grounding yourself, and you just reminded me of that. But yeah, that is important. Go ahead. So you were saying about how since you are, or we are awakened and taking care of our bodies and consuming foods and things that are making the body stronger, will not affect us, those chemicals. Go ahead, continue with that.
Yeah, that will help. You see, solar gazing is also very, very important. Try and look at the sun, stare at the sun, because the photons and the electrons are received directly into the nervous system, into the brain and the nervous system, and the body is nourished with electricity. Everything in the universe is the effect of electricity. Everything. There is nothing that appears before your eyes that was not produced by electromagnetic forces. Therefore, your body is a magnet. The earth is a magnet. The sun is a magnet. Everything that's visible is a magnet, which is infused with electric current. So the body needs electric current, and you can get that by walking on dirt, staring at the sun. Herbs, alkaline herbs, not acidic herbs like hybrid plants like peppermint, chamomile, comfrey, aloe vera. These are all man-made hybrid plants, and they're acidic. And acid foods are what create imbalance in the body and compromise the mucous membrane and cause cancers. I've never had a thing wrong with. I'm 49 now. Soon, next month, I'll be 49. I've never had a problem. I've had one headache all my life. I've never been immunized. I'm a natural person. I eat natural food. I grew up walking on dirt in the country like a wild, savage little country boy. My father had every kind of plant. He had olives, pomegranates, figs, nuts, tomatoes, watermelons, cherries. We had every kind of plant. I would go straight up to an apple tree, and man, I have got plenty of electric charge in my body to last me for a long time. But people who eat food out of boxes and cans, there's no electric force in that food. It's processed. That's why people look so old and wrinkly. You know, they get to 35 and all of a sudden they've got wrinkles. I mean, my God, you shouldn't have wrinkles till you get to 65. What's going on? It's the food. It's dead food. People are eating dead food.
All right, Santos. I think that's going to do it for us. It's about 5 past